Let's go to CNN business editor at large, Richard Quest. And Richard, these tariffs now in effect across the world today, a big move. Did the markets take this in stride? What was the impact?
They were expecting it. They knew it was coming. The market was down, but not as much as it could have been. The grand experiment, Jake, has begun. Tariffs, the like of which has not been seen for a century, now in place. And really, we just wait and see. Because, as you rightly point out, various things shipped before yesterday but arriving before October are at old tariff rates. We won't know the full effect. And besides inflation, there'll be slowdown in growth. That's an almost certainty. There will be a slowdown in growth, there'll be higher inflation, and we will expect to see unemployment go up. But how much? That is the grand experiment that everybody's watching and waiting.
And Richard, what is the significance, if any, of Trump nominating Dr. Stephen Miron to that vacated seat on the Federal Reserve Board?
Firstly, eminently qualified, eminently justifiable decision. Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, a perfectly, if you will, reasonable appointment per se, but a loyalist. An absolute Trump loyalist who has put forward the Trump economic agenda in many different facets, particularly on tariffs. He will be pushing for lower interest rates. So there's another vote to lower rates sooner rather than later. But they're going down at the September meeting. It's going to be the pressure going forward that's going to be where this new vote will count.
All right, Richard Quest, thanks. Let's bring in now CNN's Phil Mattingly. And Phil, you have been looking into what big companies are saying on their earnings calls, which have been happening the last few days, about the impact of tariffs. Let's first look to items important to every American, clothing and food. What are you hearing from those industries?
And look, just to start with, the reason for doing this is we have seen, and I think despite the prognostications of significant doom immediately after the tariffs were first announced, a lot of companies, to your point, haven't passed them through necessarily. They have eaten some of them. They've been very nervous about getting kind of under the eye of Sauron of President Trump,
right,
and becoming an enemy of the administration. But they were very clear in the most recent quarter calls that are still playing out today that there are problems coming and price increases that will likely come with them. Now, you talk about apparel, clothing, shoes in particular. Nike saying that they're probably going to take a hit of about $1 billion that they're going to need to offset with higher prices.
Adidas, so they're all saying they're going to raise prices. It's not that they're going to eat it, they're going to pass it on.
At least in some form.
Yeah.
Adidas, a $230 million hit, will have to raise prices specifically in the U.S. market is what they're saying. Walmart has warned of looming price increases. General Mills has been a little cagier about it, saying they need to change their price strategy to be competitive, but taking hits on the tariff front. Coors, $20 to $35 million in increased costs over the course of the rest of this year because of the aluminum tariffs. We're seeing it on consumer-facing goods. Exactly. You're seeing it on consumer-facing goods. And at some point, what we're hearing on these calls is either the margins are going to get a lot thinner to the extent they possibly can, or those costs are going to be passed on.
What about the American auto industry? Because, again, one of the reasons that Trump is doing this, President Trump is doing this, is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So you would think theoretically this will help automakers, but what are they saying?
Again, the difficulty here is that the auto industry, even the U.S.-based automakers, are not entirely based in the U.S. Now, there are some important exemptions in the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement involved in some of the tariffs in the North America front. But if you take a look at Ford, they're saying they're going to take at least a $3 billion hit. They believe they can take on about $1 billion, but at some point that's going to be passed on, and the $2 billion they can't. Toyota, which obviously is not based entirely in the U.S., but builds a lot of cars in the United States, has plants here, they announced today a nearly $10 billion hit based on the tariffs as they currently stand. So there are significant impacts that are coming, more so for the foreign-based automakers. White House says, hey, bring your plants here, manufacture everything here. You'll be able to get outside of it. But as it currently stands, supply chains aren't the just snap of the finger type of move, especially for an industry like the automotive industry, and they're going to feel pain.
So, and this is, they're not saying, oh, we're going to raise prices next month. They're just saying, we have to deal, for instance, the $3 billion hit that you just talked about for Ford. We have to deal with this, and we're just going to have to figure it out.
And I think that's been the moment where, okay, we've got time to figure this out. Maybe the tariff levels will change. Maybe they'll pull back. Maybe this is just a threat.
Yeah.
Maybe the exporters will eat some of the costs as we make deals because of the strength of the U.S. market and fear of actually losing market share. Those moments of speculating, hoping, trying to plan around I've now moved to reality. And so I think the question right now is the administration has made very clear they believe because of the value of the U.S. consumer in the world market writ large, that the exporters will eat the costs, not the importers, even though they write the checks, or that the companies themselves simply won't be willing to pass it on out of fear of getting priced out of the U.S. market. We'll see. That is their theory of the case. Stephen Myron is kind of the primary intellectual driver of that theory of the case. It's going to get tested very fast.
So let me just ask you one quick question. When the Trump administration says, oh, we're getting so much money for the tariffs, is that accurate, but also U.S. taxpayers are ultimately going to have to pay the companies that are paying the tariffs? Do you know what I mean?
In a purely technical sense, when customs officials are collecting the revenue, are collecting the tariff
that is
money,
from abroad.
That is, no. That is from a U.S.-based importer writes the check.
Okay.
Where it gets a little bit complicated is because of fear of losing market share, because of deal making, it doesn't necessarily mean they're paying all of it out of their own pocket, right? The exporter could make a deal with the importer and say, look, we understand that you are going to have to cover this. We'll take it off your plate. We'll either cut it from the price we're giving you for the goods on wholesale, or we'll give you a credit. You know, there are ways to make deals about it. Or the companies who are paying the import costs are actually paying for those tariffs. They say, we've got enough space right now on our balance sheet to finance this because we can't afford to pass it on. The sustainability and durability of that, all I think about in these moments are the people that you've talked to and I've talked to on your show as part of your Leaders series who are saying, maybe I got another month or two.
Yeah.
Maybe I got another 3 or 4 months, but at some point I'm going to have to pass it on.
Their margins are 2 or 3%.
Exactly.
They've been eating it, and it's going to go to their customers. Phil, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Let's talk about this now with Michigan's Democratic Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. It's a state that obviously borders Canada, where those higher tariffs are now in effect. And Michigan, of course, is also home to the major automakers, including Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. We should also mention Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist is also running for governor. Thanks for joining us. So you and Michigan Governor Whitmer last week signed an executive directive asking state offices to calculate the latest impacts of tariffs on Michigan's economy. You can't stop the tariffs, they're federal. So when you get that report back, what are you going to do with that information?
Well, first and foremost, I want to talk about the fact that the impact of these tariffs are not things that are going to happen down the line. It's hurting Michigan businesses and Michigan families right now. We have seen auto suppliers already, like Detroit Axle, begin to lay people off, 102 people, and close a facility. A furniture maker and clock maker in West Michigan, Herman Miller, that's existed for 100 years, is going to close down and lay off 100 people. We're trying to get our arms around what this means for Michigan families that are already seeing higher prices on food, school supplies, pencils and backpacks. People are getting hurt. So what we're going to do is look at what we can do at our disposal to make sure we can continue to put money in Michiganders' pockets, frankly, so they can try to weather this storm. But ultimately, the Trump administration is inflicting chaos on our communities, on our individuals, and on our economy and businesses. And so we have to continue to fight back and tell those stories.
So this week, Governor Whitmer met for a third time with President Trump since he took office. She was there to express concern over tariffs. A White House official said to us that Whitmer is a bipartisan governor who wants to get things done. Will you take the same approach as governor should you win the nomination and the election? Would you meet with President Trump if you become governor?
The responsibility of the governor of Michigan is to advance the interests of the people of Michigan and carry their stories wherever they need to be carried. They're going to be in the room with me, no matter who I'm talking to, whether it's having to confront a president who's inflicting pain on our economy, who's attacking universities in our state, then that's a confrontation that I absolutely will have to let the people of Michigan know that I'm going to fight for them.
Today, Vice President J.D. Vance is in one of your neighboring states, Indiana. He's ramping up the pressure on Republican leaders there in that state to redraw their congressional maps, not at the end of the decade, as is normal, but now, mid-decade, just the way Texas is doing. You have said that it's time for blue state governors to fight back. Does Michigan have any current plans to, in your words, fight back and meet a gerrymander with a gerrymander?
Well, let's be really clear, first and foremost. They are trying to cheat their way to keeping Congress because they just voted to take health care away from millions of people and food assistance away from millions of people. So rather than trying to actually defend that horrendous and deadly vote, they're trying to find ways where they can cheat to get more seats in red states. Now, in Michigan, we do this the right way. We have an independent citizens redistricting commission that the voters voted for in 2018 that took the politicians out of the process. But because the politicians are still driving the process in Texas, they're still driving the process in Indiana. That's why Donald Trump and J.D. Vance can go and pressure and bully Republican lawmakers to do their bidding and cheat for them. But no, blue state governors that have those tools at their disposal, they absolutely need to fight that fire with fire. We're going to bring that same kind of heat and that same kind of energy. In Michigan, we do it the right way. That's how we should do it across America, to be clear. In the meantime, though, we're going to do the right thing in Michigan, and then folks will use the tools they have at their disposal in other states.